Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Packaging Experts Roundtable. I think we've got a really good one for you today. Little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone is muted, but we've got a Q&A panel. You know, one of the windows floating around in this platform is Q&A, and we'd love to get your questions throughout. We've dedicated some time at the end where we'll go through them, and as always, those we don't get to, we'll try to address in the community. And then we've got, this is of course being recorded, and you'll get a link to the recording following the event. So if you've been here before, you recognize the first three of us. I'm Bob Kelly. I run product management for AdminStudio and some other tools here at Flexera. We've got Kieran, who works with me on my team, and Mike O'Connor, who's a solution engineer that's been supporting this product forever and really has a wealth of knowledge for us to tap into. But joining us today are the guys behind the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, which is extremely popular with everybody that we talk to. We hear about it all the time. We even have to explain to people when they say, oh, no, I don't use AdminStudio because I use PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. I'm like, well, it's not an alternative or competing technology. In fact, we support it. So I've been wanting to get these guys on for a while. I think, you might not have seen them before. They don't promote themselves very heavily. But, some sharp guys, found a problem, came up with a solution, and they've been kind enough to join us here today so that we can talk to them about it. If I could get you guys to introduce yourselves, I think that'd be great.
Sure. So my name is Sean Lillis. I'm from Ireland. I'm working in endpoint management, coming up on about 20 years experience, and I'm happy to be here today.
Hey, I'm Dan Cunningham. I'm also from Ireland, but living in Canada. I'm in endpoint management and security for 25 years or so.
Okay. And I am Mohammed Mishwani, and I'm originally from Texas, but living in Maryland. And I have about 15 years experience in endpoint management. And happy to be here.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here very much. We do try to keep this conversational, but I did ask the guys to come with some specific points that I think people would like to hear about. What are the basic use cases? What are the plans? What's its origin? That type of stuff. So, you guys want to take us through some of this, and we'll sit back and enjoy?
Sure. I'll kick us off. So, we're going to start by answering what problem does the App Deploy Toolkit address. And really what it's doing is it's bridging a gap between software distribution toolset and packaging technology. And one of the ways it does that is it provides some flexible messaging options that many of the software distribution toolsets don't provide. So when it comes to deploying an application install that is potentially disruptive to your users, you can give your users more control over how they might defer the installation to a later time, how they might need to close their applications or restart the machine. If we take the Microsoft platform as an example of that, so we've seen over the years that Microsoft have added some capabilities to the Config Manager product, which have somewhat helped to close some of those gaps. But increasingly now, organizations are looking at migrating application workloads over to Intune MIM. And that tool set is really lacking in some of these capabilities. And actually, we're seeing quite a bit of new interest and uptake in the App Deploy Toolkit from those organizations. A common challenge that people face is, they need to perform some custom pre- and post-install actions. And sometimes it's just easier to do that in a script to do the logic and sequencing in a script than it is to do that in a package. And the App Deploy Toolkit provides a set of ready-made functions that help to make that easier. So one of the examples of that would be where you need to bundle some tightly coupled applications into a single deployment. One thing a lot of people point out is the consistent approach that the App Deploy Toolkit enables. So whether that's the user experience or the logging of all of the installation actions, it's something that, in fact, a lot of organizations are wrapping all of their deployments in the toolkit just for that consistent approach and methodology. And one of the great benefits of that is if you take that scenario of migration from Config Manager to Intune, is that you can carry across that familiar user experience that your users know between those platforms.
Yeah, consistency for the end user and where to do customizations and so forth. Excuse me, but I was actually using a wrapper like way back, and it was just a batch file called like install.bat, right? And then that would have the path and command line and whatever, usually very small number of things needed to be addressed, but it was for consistency in just handing it to the deployment team, right? So I think there's some good benefit there that, okay, this is how all packages come from the packaging team, and I know what to expect and how to use it because it's always the same.
Right. Yeah. So the next thing I was going to talk about was how it improves efficiency and success rates of app deployments. So we mentioned the scenario where you can give users more control over an app deployment, and conversely, if you have an update that you need to get out urgently, you can sort of decide how persistent and the level of annoyance factor that you're willing to leverage to get that out. And you can do that with a few options like setting a deadline for the install, countdown to force closing applications, or being quite persistent with the prompts that the user sees on screen. Another thing the toolkit can help with is with some large install files. So something like AutoCAD as an example, or anything that's maybe greater than a gigabyte in size. You can use the built-in zip functionality to bundle up those files. And there's even a community extension that will provide a WIM file format with some deduplication. So that can help with the efficiency of distribution and your distribution points. And one other thing then is just around, we're seeing a lot more applications that auto-update these days. And whereas, typically an MSI that tries to install at the same time as another MSI will fail, the toolkit can handle that scenario and give us the option of waiting for that other MSI install that's in flight to complete, rather than failing the install.
Do you get feedback from people about the pop-ups? I know, you as an admin, you'd go into that script and come up with a very concise, perfectly worded message, and then users automatically just click OK to everything that pops up. But I guess you can address that with the persistency that you mentioned, right? So you can have it keep coming up until you are satisfied.
Exactly. And I think users get used to the danger buttons and what's going to close their applications and what they need to look out for if something is about to count down. So it's,
I guess the branding would help too, right? Because you allow the colors and images, and maybe that's something that people pay more attention to because they know it could mean an application is going to close or their system's going to reboot, and they shouldn't instinctively dismiss it.
I think a lot of companies take the toolkit as is, and then they'll replace the banner with a company logo and change it to their own corporate branding. And that generally, I mean, if they have all of their deployments kind of staged that way, it tends to end up being a very good way of staving off any sort of malware or ransomware that are going to try and, install a copy of Adobe Reader or something like that. We know from working in whatever company it's going to be that you work at, that for the last 3 years, we've always seen a company branded deployment. So if we suddenly get an Adobe one, then that would cause people to pause.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah. Last thing here is just to to mention that the intent of this is not to replace app packaging best practice, as Bob alluded to earlier. It's there to complement app packaging. In an ideal world, everything would be repackaged, but sometimes there isn't the expertise or the time to repackage, and where the toolkit can help as a time saver.
Yeah, this is one I pushed you for. I wanted a little backstory.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the toolkit started back in 2013 as a collaboration between myself and Dan, and Mo joined the team a little bit later on. So it was originally developed as a replacement for WiseScript. We really built it from an enterprise perspective. So we wanted it to be robust, with extensive error handling and logging to be able to, thousands of applications and endpoints, and not just replace the WiseScript approach, but actually improve on it. So it was developed in our spare time, and we then took it into a large global organization where it was first rolled out. And from there, then we decided to publish as open source, initially on CodePlex and later on GitHub. And I guess since then, the adoption is greater than any of us could have really imagined. And that's really been driven by word of mouth on forums. It's been showcased by MVPs at a number of conferences. And there's lots of blog posts out there, lots of people writing great posts about how they've used it to solve particular challenges. And really, it wouldn't be what it is today without that feedback that we've got from the community. So, it's built by the community for the community, and all of those enterprises using the toolkit on different SOEs, solving different problems, and being able to feed some of that back to us has helped to enhance the capabilities and the stability of the tool.
What's the primary method you go about receiving community feedback? Is there a preferred means of communication people should come out to you with when they have a suggestion? Or
tends to be GitHub is probably the best place to put it. We do also have a forum as well on the website, but I guess just given the way things have been, like with COVID and our personal lives, we've probably not been as active on the forums as we would have liked, but that's kind of changing at the moment. So.
I know WiseScript is really, really legacy, many, many years old, but since you're saying that the idea was to replace WiseScript, I'm just curious to know what is that you found in WiseScript? What is that you thought WiseScript did not have that you wanted to bring it in this toolkit?
Well, I think initially the worry was that WiseScript was going away. I think it had been deprecated at the time, back in around 2012, 2013. So there was nothing in the market that would kind of replace it. And I think initially we were looking to try and get a single executable, so a scripted install with a single executable. With PowerShell, that wasn't going to happen. We didn't want to go backwards and use VBScript, and PowerShell seemed like the right approach.
I think this project actually helped a lot of people make that move to PowerShell, because everybody kind of was hearing that PowerShell is the preferred professional scripting language, and it's been really pushed by Microsoft, but it's not for the faint of heart, right? Like if you come from VBScript, PowerShell can be pretty intimidating. And I think this is probably where a lot of people got their feet wet with it.
Well, I think this is actually exactly what happened to us. Was PowerShell was kind of on the horizon. I don't think anyone really wanted to learn it, but we all knew VBScript. But there was this push to switch to PowerShell. So the functions that we built were actually largely kind of developed as a replacement for WiseScript, but also to kind of simplify things in PowerShell that were so easy in either in WiseScript or in VBScript. So yeah, I mean that helped us to learn it as well. So. It all worked out.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, this is really how I got into the weeds with PowerShell and .NET, both. So yeah, it was a learning experience all around.
I always tell people the best way to learn scripting in particular probably applies to a lot of things, but is to have like a real problem to solve. So you guys were biting off on a lot with a new technology and probably pushed you ahead pretty fast.
Yep.
For sure.
I think what definitely pushed us along was once we open sourced, there was so many like feature requests and I suppose bugs that we found, things that we were fringe cases that we never saw. And that kind of getting those sort of things fixed and new features added really drove the project along in the early years.
Yep. Yeah, support for languages and being able to account for, certain types of artifacts within the operating system that are different based on language, figuring all that kind of stuff out so we have solid product that anyone anywhere can use. And
that was ultimately kind of the what we wanted to achieve was just 100% stability. That if you're packaging an application, you could rely on the toolkit to always function every single time and never let you down. You'd never worry about writing a bad script because it was just going to be so straightforward. And I think we managed to achieve that by and large. So.
I think it has, the confirmation that you got there is this widespread adoption we've seen.
And that has been extremely widespread, way more than we could have ever imagined.
Yep. So coming on to the capabilities then. The toolkit, it provides a set of common functions that are needed when deploying applications, and you don't need a lot of PowerShell expertise to pick this up. So you can do things quite straightforwardly with one-line commands like installing MSIs, executables. There's a function in there to bulk remove MSIs if they match a certain name, set registry keys, shortcuts, copy files, and so much more. The user interface then is obviously a key element to the toolkit as well, with the option to close apps prior to an install. And we think it's pretty unique as well that the toolkit can actually prevent those apps from being opened while an install is in progress. So if a user gets a little bit impatient and tries to relaunch that app that they've been asked to close, we can stop them from doing that. You can provide users with the option to defer an install based on a number of times, a number of days, or until a specified date. You've got post-install computer restarts, which are also deferrable. And you also have an option for a countdown to a forced restart. And all of the user elements can be, all of the user interface elements can be customized. So you can add your own corporate logo, and hopefully we'll see a demonstration shortly where Dan can show how that's done. The UI is localized in 21 languages, and those are all configurable in XML. And one thing, a lot of users point to of the toolkit is the logging capability. So everything that the Windows installer and the toolkit itself does is automatically logged in a consistent way, which is really invaluable for troubleshooting.
And your error handling too. Right. That's the thing that we may not do in our own wrapper, is actually think to handle everything and log everything. So it's a big win not to have to make that investment ourselves.
Yep. I'm calling out a specific function here because, again, it's another thing a lot of people point to as one of the reasons why they use the toolkit. And that's this invoke HKCU registry setting for all users, which is an alternative to active setup and overcomes some of the shortcomings there. So you can run that in the system context, and you don't need a log off.
Yeah, and just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, the way it sort of works, especially since active setup is technically deprecated. It's a function of IE. First of all, it was never meant to be used in that fashion anyways, but there was no other good option at the time. And now that with IE going away as being the replacement, it's definitely on the chopping block, right? So if you're using active setup in your packages, stop and probably update and find alternative methods. And this is a good alternative method because it, the way we kind of have architected it, it finds all the users that physically log into the machine and finds their profile, finds their registry hive. It's able to load that, modify it, and then also take the default registry hive, which when you create a new user, the default registry hive is used to initiate that new user account. So you can, this function will also let you modify that. So any new users that are created on an endpoint will also have those settings that you wanted, those user settings. And so it kind of covers all the bases. And like Sean mentioned, no log off required.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I hadn't realized you guys had done that, but active setup is something that a lot of people still reach into, to address certain problems. So this is another nice enhancement I bet a lot of people don't know about.
Yep. Last point then is just to mention that the toolkit is updatable. So, you can have your per deployment scripts, and you can drop in the latest version of the toolkit if you need to. When it's released, and it's also extensible. So, you can, and a lot of organizations do this. They have custom requirements and things that they maybe do repetitively with the toolkit, and they have their own custom functions. Also, community extensions available. There's the capabilities, and I think we're going to try to give you a demonstration now with Dan.
All right, let me just see if I can share my screen, or share out this window at least. Let me know when you can see that. We're good to go?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to kind of just walk through three different scenarios, or well, two scenarios and one just kind of demo of a few features. So first off, a zero-touch install. So this is essentially being able to drag an MSI file into a folder and be able to deploy just like that. We'll leverage a number of the core features of the toolkit, and we'll automatically pull information from the MSI. So the key thing here is we use same defaults, and we leverage a number of the core features to display things like dialogues, standardize on logging, and then catch any potential errors that might occur. So I'll just run our deploy application executable. This is just for a 7-zip install. So if I look into the 7-zip folder, or sorry, the files folder, I've got an MSI file there, and that's literally the only change that's been done to this after being downloaded from the website. So I run my executable, and the standard template allows a deferral of up to 3 times. So we get our Deploy Toolkit logo or window with our configurable banner, And this just has some details here. If this was on a French machine, this would be displayed in French, and the same for all the other languages. So I can either defer or else I can continue. So we'll just go continue. And we'll get a progress dialog and a balloon tip. This won't take long. Pretty much, I think our install is probably done now. So I could just check. Yep, 7 zips there. Okay, so that's like literally no scripting required for that. No knowledge of any of the toolkit functions. It's just drop an MSI in and you get the benefits of all of the logging. If I just jump over to my logs folder, you'll see here I've got 2 new logs, one being the deploy toolkit, which is contains all of the scripting details and everything that was done. And the other is actually an MSI log file. So a standard MSI log, yep, it was all successful and we're good to go.
So when you say no scripting, you mean just by having an MSI in that files folder, you didn't have to go into the template and even say that this is a 7-zip package?
You don't need to do a single thing. The benefits of this is, I mean, there's plenty of things that you don't necessarily need to repackage, but by just doing this, by dropping an MSI into this folder and then packaging that as your deployment, you get all the benefits of standardized logging and knowing that your MSI is essentially being protected by the toolkit. So I'll go into a little bit more of a, well, we'll call it a simple install, but it's going to involve some scripting. So let me just jump over to VS Code. And sorry, you'll see here on the previous one, the zero-touch install, I didn't set any of the variables. This was all handled automatically. So it pulled it out of the MSI and ran the install that way. Now, this is our simple install, and within here, we have made a number of changes. So we have a couple of different phases that run. For an install, we'll have a pre-install, install, and post-install. We also have phases for an uninstall and for a repair to match Windows installer. And what we've done here is, so we're displaying a message. We're also going to prompt to close VLC if it's open. So this is a VLC deployment. We'll allow deferral, but instead of 3 times, we're going to allow deferral for up to 5 days. That should say 5. Oops. Let me just go back here, correct that. What have I done? All right. So I'm not going to correct that right now, or can I? There, that's better. So yeah, we're also going to do a disk space check to make sure we have enough, and then we'll persist the prompt. It'll be basically the topmost window. Then we're going to just display a progress message, and if we find any previous version of VLC installed, we'll remove it. Doesn't matter what version it is, we're going to scan through all of the installed apps, and we'll pull it out that way. And then in our install phase, we just literally run the MSI. And finally, we want to remove the desktop shortcut and just display a little message at the end. Okay, so let me kick this off. And this actually has a previous version of VLC installed. You'll see I've got a shortcut there. So now, one thing I didn't mention was I've actually customized the banner as well. So you can see we have a nice Flexera banner. Here's our install details, and you're being prompted to close the app as well. And here it is. So when I click on close programs, away it goes. And now the actual removal is going to kick off. So in the background, you'll see this icon should disappear. Yep, there you go. So the removal has happened, and now it's actually going to do the install as well. And it won't take long.
And it's Windows 11 compatible.
There you go. So you'll see the icon that was created as part of the MSI was removed by the script, and we just get this little message at the end. All of the message boxes are customizable, even down to the buttons. So I'll just put in a thank you button, but this could be a yes, no. It could be any up to 3 different buttons, I think. And then we can use that to get to drive the response. Use the response to drive the actual script itself. So you'll see there that's completed successfully, and that's all good and well. We're good to go. So the third example I wanted to show was not really an install per se, but just a couple of more of those extended functions. So if I jump into my script here. So here I've got another installation welcome command. I'm going to actually open up Notepad++, and I wanted to just show off force closing apps. More importantly, block execution, which will allow us to prevent something from being reopened. So here we're going to show another installation progress message. Then I'm actually going to try and run Notepad as part of the install. I could click it myself, but I'm lazy. So that'll take care of that. And then at the end, I'm just going to do an installation restart. So we'll have this 40-second countdown. And then for 20 seconds of that, we're not going to be able to defer it, or we're not going to be able to stop the restart from happening or change any of the buttons. So let's go ahead and give this one a go. Okay, so it knows we've got Notepad open, and we now have 50 seconds to close it down, or else it'll do that for us. And we might want to make sure that we have everything saved there first. But let's go ahead and close it. You'll see it's disappeared off the start bar. And we'll get our progress dialog in a second. There we go. So again, this is customizable. We can change the text to whatever we want. You'll see there, that's where Notepad++ has tried to be restarted, and it's actually been blocked. So we get a nice message to say, look, you can't run this while it's installing. This has been really useful during Microsoft Office installs, or like very large installs like AutoCAD. It allows you to basically change a lot on the back end, and the user can't do anything with it. And finally, we get a restart prompt. So we're able to just minimize this for any period of time. But what should happen, I think, is at around the 20-second mark, this window should pop back up. Although I can't remember if I needed to. There we go. Yeah. So that's basically our final. The only thing we can do is just restart now or wait for the countdown to complete. And because I'm brave, I'll just let that go ahead and restart my VM. But I mean, you can see it's pretty minimal effort in terms of what you need, or the amount of that you can get out of it with very, very little script effort. And we have common functions to do things like copy files and change the registry. There's lots of very, very easily modifiable things in there that just simplify PowerShell for everyone. So yeah, demo done.
Demo done and successful. That was really good.
How often does that happen?
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything specific in the toolkit to handle the upgrades, let's say from one version to the new version of application, or do you all leave it on the installer as to how it handles the upgrades?
So I guess upgrades are a really hairy topic. It depends on whether it's an MSI or whether it's an executable that's done the previous deployment. You're always at the hostage of the previous version, and
right.
Maybe the installer technology requires. I've always found myself, best practice has always been remove everything that the first version or that any previous version has put down and put it down fresh. That's just my take on things. I just like things to be as clean as possible. And so that's why, as part of that, the first script I showed, or the second script, I would have removed VLC rather than try and upgrade it, because carrying settings across as well, especially in an enterprise environment, is maybe not necessarily the best thing to do.
Right. Your second demo is what got me this question as to, I sometimes feel that's a cleaner approach. You rather uninstall the previous version and do a fresh installation of the new version. Now, I see that the toolkit handles it pretty smoothly. That makes the job very easy. Yeah,
it can do. Yeah, and the standard template, I think we pretty much leave in there. If you've got a previous version of something, get rid of it, and then we'll reinstall.
Sure. Thanks.
Hey, Dan, can you stop sharing your screen? I think it might be blocking the video.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And just on that question around uninstalls or upgrades, There's a number of different ways to go about it. So, if, for instance, you're using a config manager product, you've got supersedence there, and it's going to go ahead and do an uninstall of the previous version. But then as well, you've got the pre-install phase where you can also do the cleanup. So, it's sort of like a fail-safe mechanism to make sure that everything is removed.
Right, so you're basically providing all the framework that is required to handle the upgrades. I could either use the pre-install section of the template to clean up the previous version, or I could rather use the supersedence of Configuration Manager in case I'm using Configuration Manager in my organization.
Right, and the toolkit has both an install and an uninstall switch on the command line. So if you call the script with the uninstall command, it's going to perform all of those actions that you specified in the uninstall section of the deploy script.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thanks. Cool.
All right. Let's see. We do have. I don't know if I'm getting the slide back up or not. Can't be sure you're seeing the slide, but I'll just talk through it anyway. I wanted to mention that because there's a lot of, okay, good. Because there's so many, AdminStudio customers on the call, I wanted to highlight that we do have support for PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. We ship it with AdminStudio. It can be updated outside of our own updates if you wish, and of course, customize the template and get it the way you want. Then in the application catalog, you can right-click on a package and just say wrap, and then you'll be given the command line. We can recommend a silent install and uninstall command. If you're using the PowerShell or the package feed module, then we can get it from there, or you can supply your own install and uninstall command. But these are basically the two key variables that we're injecting into the template. And PowerShell is the default. We talked about WiseScript. We did bring WiseScript back due to customer demand for those shops that have been using it forever and just don't want to change. We recommend PowerShell to anybody getting started. But the idea is that in a very similar way, you can have a template and we can inject the silent install and uninstall commands into it on the fly very easily, and it will just generate that. And then in the catalog, you'd then have the install itself and then the PowerShell script, and you can choose to publish that. So I think we probably more frequently see people publish a wrapped script than just the native command line. And then of course you can repackage. I think one of the more common scenarios for repackaging I'm seeing now isn't so much that the setup isn't in the format I want or it's not silent like I want, but I want customizations that I can't figure out. So, I could put those customizations in the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit as a post-install task, but it does require you to learn something about how the application works, what needs to be changed to get the outcome you want. Probably not a new idea, but I'll put it out there. One way to figure out what you need to script is to do a snapshot and then not use it. Just use it to see what changed, and then you can decide if those things might be better placed within your wrapper script. Anything to add, Mike or Kieran, on our AdminStudio integration? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, if I can, I'll take credit, because I had some people that were looking at AdminStudio and say, well, I do a lot in this new PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, so I'll toot my own horn and say I was pushing for adding it to AdminStudio, what we've done. So, but in essence, whatever, it really depends on what you do to prepare the application. Depends on what you're starting off with, right? What has the vendor provided you, and what can you do with customization? Hopefully they've documented it documented it and allow you to run it silent, but that's not always the case. So whether it's repackaging works best, whether it's wrapping with PowerShell, whether it's creating transform files for a vendor MSI and pushing it out as is, we want to be able to be that toolkit on top of PowerShell and other offerings to whatever you need to do to prepare that application, whatever is the best and fastest way to get there to the finish line. That's what we can do with AdminStudio. So whether that's PowerShell, whether that's repackaging, whether that's you've got a lot of WiseScript packages and you just want to continue with WiseScript, that's fine too. You can use any and all those at your disposal.
While we make it like really super easy to wrap packages, after the wrapping, the wrapper partial package that you have, AdminStudio treats that as any other packages in the catalog. So that is another advantage that I see. You'll be able to publish the PowerShell script to SSEM for the deployment, or you could use this PowerShell script for conversion to, let's say, other formats. Now, the beauty of this is this script would have your post-install or pre-install section scripted, and you have all your tasks covered. So all your post, pre, and the actual package installation all together into one single package, let's say after you wrap and then convert into another format. So that is another benefit that I see.
I'm waiting for someone else to say something. If it was me, you hung up there for a second, Kieran, but I think you wrapping up. I think we got one more slide on PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, and then we can get into the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah. So, so over the years, we've done some informal polls, and we've just, I heard from colleagues and other people in the industry about where the toolkit has been used. We've been sort of, pleasantly surprised to see how far and wide its reach has gone since since we've just been quietly working on it in our spare time. And, it's used in Fortune 500s, small and medium-sized businesses, packaging factories, consultancies. So, a wide array of industries as well, from federal government to education to defense, finance, what have you. Just rough math, millions of endpoints globally. I think if you, let me see, can I hit next to go? Yeah, and this was a little quote that we really liked. We got from a blog post that Bob posted on your website. But this little quote was gold. I just threw it in there for fun. Just how is it used? It's available under the LGPL license. I know that's usually pretty important for enterprises to understand what sort of license something is offered under if they're going to be using it. And if you're familiar with VLC or 7-Zip, that's the same license those two products have. So, if you're using 7-Zip internally, then, you can feel safe using PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit as well without running into any problems. We've done things like Office 365 upgrades, which can be complicated, OS upgrades, and other administrative tasks. I've used the toolkit not necessarily for packaging. I've used it for writing a utility to migrate files to OneDrive and other little utilities in the endpoint space because the functions are solid and they've been tested quite thoroughly. So I go back to if I have some other use case, I'll just steal the function and I'll write some other utility using it. And of course, it doesn't matter what deployment tool set you have, Config Manager, Intune, Altiris, what have you. You can use it across all the different tool sets. Going to next slide, just kind of talking about future roadmaps. We do have a V4 rewrite, a complete ground-up rewrite in the works. We're rewriting the code base to be optimized for speed and security. Going to revamp the UI so that it's a little bit more modern and in line with Windows 10 and Windows 11 UI changes. Enhanced support for Intune. And also, we want to create a proper run as user utility. I know right now in the config manager space, there's, I'm forgetting the name of the utility everyone uses. Service UI, right? Service UI. And then there's, I think in the toolkit right now, we have, we're using Task Scheduler to launch something in the user context, but I know a lot of enterprises already have this, but maybe some smaller shops don't have a run as user utility in-house that they can use, and we're going to write one that we can make open source and make available to the community. And also, we'd like the next version to natively support OS upgrade scenarios, since Windows 10 upgrades are so often and common these days. And also, I know I've seen a couple of questions about MSI X support, and that is something that's also under consideration for the next version. And yeah, I'll leave it off there, and we can go into the Q&A.
Cool, that's some really good stuff. And I like your point there that the functions are just solid, right? And so that you can use it for other things that you might not immediately think of it for. Because I think that's a very similar story to how people got so entrenched in WiseScript editor, right? Because it's just, it has this and it has this, so you just start using it, and it becomes have a life of its own. But much better in this case as open source and PowerShell and supported, and really good stuff. So before the Q&A, I've always got my obligatory community thing. Come to the community. Outside of these events, we want questions on any related topic. But speaking of questions, I think we've got a nice little pile coming in. Mm-hmm. Sonny, any you want to highlight?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, I think, is for the guys, any plans to provide training through organizations like Udemy?
That's not something that we've ever really thought about or discussed before, have we?
No, although actually I will say I do know someone who's actually made that proposal to me. So it's something that we could definitely look into, and now we're definitely going to discuss after this. So
that's good. It seems like it could be a good opportunity for you guys to to help it get used right, and to help people get on board with it and get some benefit out of it yourself, because nobody wants you to start charging for it. So this could be a good indirect way for you guys to get some extra opportunities.
Yeah, a question came in early on was about what happens if you want user interaction, but there's no user currently logged in, and you want to still have the install proceed. What would you guys, kind of like a force install, what would you recommend in that scenario?
Actually, I think we do handle this. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you go, Mo.
I was going to say, we do handle that. So if you set up if you set up your script to display a UI or anything that requires user interaction, and the script detects that it's in a state where it's not able to interact with any user, it will switch over to a non-interactive install. And you have the choice of whether or not at that point do you want to fail, or do you want to continue installing it as system and not interact with user at all. So it will seamlessly handle that for you.
Cool. I saw someone had brought it up. We were talking before the event started, and they said they like WiseScript because it allows them to bundle everything into compiled exe. They were wondering, does PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit support that? And if not, what would you recommend there?
So it is possible to, I suppose, create create an executable out of a PowerShell script. However, from what the latest things I've seen on it, a lot of those executables have been reported as malware, and the problem now is becoming that if you just go and create any sort of PowerShell script and convert it to an executable, there's a very good chance it's going to be picked up by antivirus products. I don't know if that's actually happened yet, but it's not something I would like to go down the path of, because I mean we'll just end up promoting the demise of the PowerShell executable.
Right. I wonder, and it pops in my head, and we can discuss after, but there might be a way that we could, as Flexera, we could maybe augment that and provide that initial launcher, if you will, for the PowerShell script and bundle it together. So.
Yeah, I recall. I used to work with WiseScript quite extensively, and you could package everything up, and then you could sign it right at the very end. You could leave a little bit of padding and sign it with your own certificate outside of the toolkit itself. And I imagine you could probably do something similar with that. So, and then if if it's your trusted certificate, then perhaps you can put in a rule too. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. My future opportunity.
There was a comment after Bob mentioned that a lot of AdminStudio users still use the WiseScript editor, and as opposed to using PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit. And the person said there's just a lot of history within that company, and it's hard to really change thousands of WiseScripts. If anyone can comment on that.
Yeah. With that, I just say, yeah, that's why we still support WiseScript in AdminStudio too. So we give you more options. I'd say very similar to back in the day when I would work with installation customers, and they said, should I do install script, which was our own proprietary installation format, or should I go MSI? And I said, go MSI. That's what enterprises want to see. It is kind of a standard built into Windows. We still had a lot of customers that used install script, and we still support it even today. So if you have the history, if you have the knowledge, you have the expertise to continue to use WiseScript, I'd say go for it and keep using it. But for those that are kind of new to the space, I would say PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit is a pretty powerful tool in and of itself, and it's something, if I was going to start new, I'd probably look at PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit, but we give you the flexibility in AdminStudio to do either.
And I would just add,
that's the idea to provide flexibility, but our recommendation is the PowerShell toolkit. Like that quote that you threw up jokingly earlier, I was actually defending our decision to include WiseScript in the suite, because people that didn't understand the use case, or that we were responding to customer demand, thought we were making a crazy decision. Like why would you bring back an old technology when there's something new and better available? But it's because some people just love what they love.
There's also possibly an opportunity there for Flexera to create a conversion tool, because there's a limited set of functions within WiseScript as well, and I mean it wouldn't be too difficult, I don't think, to pull a WiseScript and convert it into a PowerShell PSADT script.
Well, as long as you're not doing any pinvoke calls.
Yeah.
Certainly could be an idea on our ideas page. See how many votes we get. I think there's another one about Intune. It says when installing under system context, the toolkit pops up messages. They don't seem to be working. Is there? I think I saw in the future roadmap, right? There was some additional plans for supporting things like that.
Yep. Yeah. So we are going to release a run as user utility that is able to execute and display things in the user context. So it would support that functionality specifically that you're asking about in Intune.
Gotcha.
But just to add, you can do that today as well. So if you go and grab the Service UI tool from the Microsoft, I think it's the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, you can get that user interaction capability in Intune with the toolkit. So I'll share those details with the person who's asked the question.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think Service UI has been around for a while, and people do use it in that specific context, and also for I think it's part of the MDT toolkit because it's helps with the it helps during OS deployments, and I think since then it's been used widely in SCCM packages and is useful for Intune as well. The only thing is it's not open source. You can't look at the code, and we do want to write our own utility that does that natively that we can modify and configure and add features to. So that's in the works.
Also on the roadmap was possible MSIX support, which I noticed the possible. Is it just bottom of the list priority wise because of adoption right now, or I'm trying to think through what you could do, and there's nothing to stop somebody from just using an MSIX install PowerShell command in the existing toolkit, but I guess the feature you'd be looking to probably introduce is to put things inside the container.
So I think mostly it's that we haven't had the time yet to investigate what we can do. Certainly, I mean, we can drive, if it's an MSIX or like an MSI exec command line based installs, we can do that sort of thing, no problem. But if there's a deeper integration that we can get, I think we will look to do it. But it's going to be, I suppose, heavily based around what value can we actually add. If we're integrating for the sake of integrating and not really providing any value, then what's the point?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is going to be, a lot of the current functions you have, like copy a file or change your registry entry, having a in the container version, or maybe you set your context to, okay, I want to change outside, I want to change inside, and that would probably be where the value would come.
Add logging, error trapping, all that sort of stuff.
And everything else. Right.
Yeah.
I think we got time for one more question. There was a question about how do we support silent, non-interactive, trusted PowerShell scripting? So I assume like signing the PowerShell script, right, for the environment.
Yeah, so I mean, if your environment is currently set to remote signed or one of the other execution policies, a more restrictive execution policy, then you'd need a signed script. Anything that's run as a current user, I mean, we inherit like the security permissions that PowerShell has. So if it's run as a standard user, it's not going to be able to do anything beyond that. If it's been executed by a software deployment tool like SCCM or Tanium Deploy, then it's going to be inheriting kind of system rights. And yeah, I mean, there's potential to incorrectly script something and makes a system more insecure, but I mean that's the same of any kind of scripting language or tool like WiseScript. It's a matter of kind of like being careful. There's a PowerShell execution mode that I'm forgetting the name of right now. It's a very restrictive PowerShell execution method or model, and I'm going to see if anyone else remembers the name of it. Mo, Sean?
Yeah, it's isn't it just called restricted mode?
It could be.
Yes, it is. It is just, so there's restricted, unrestricted, and remote signed. So I think you're talking about restricted.
It's actually not that. That's not what I was talking about. There's, those will be whether a script is allowed to run or not. This is a more restrictive mode for PowerShell to run in. And the name escapes me. I'll have to look it up. But essentially, a lot of the things that you try and run a normal PowerShell command won't actually work because you're in this further restricted mode. I know as of right now, we don't currently support it just because it's too restrictive for us to actually operate and do anything in. But it's something that I'd like to investigate a little bit more.
Cool. Well, we all look forward to it and appreciate your you being here today, but more importantly, the contribution you guys have made to the community and to help so many people get their applications out the way they want them to. So, on behalf of a lot of people, thank you very much. We'll be back again. We've been doing every other month, and we would come back December, but we decided, everybody's kind of checking out around that time frame, so we just push it to January. So look for our next session coming up in January. Any
Awesome.
final
Thank
words?
you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was great to be
Thanks.
here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care.